Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players Podcast. This is our show for Saturday, January 18th. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you in a freezing cold Brooklyn bunker once again. Very happy to be joined by a man who is currently in the greatest city in the world, getting to get on a rocket ship and head to planet Texas, from what I understand. He's Jonathan Kinch. And JK, what's been up with you, my man?
Yeah, I just can't take the cold anymore, Pete. No one warned me about New York City cold. There's two things about
Everyone warned you about New York City cold. Don't lie to me.
Well, I said to did Saratoga cold before, so I was like, this is nothing. But the difference is that Saratoga cold, just like Austin, the Texas summer heat, you dress appropriately. You get in a car, you get out of the car, you get into a building, you get back in the car, you get back in the house. That's how you can handle Texas heat as well. But the thing about New York is that you have to walk places, and there's gale force winds cutting through buildings, smacking you right in the face. So
to be fair, this polar vortex we've been experiencing is way worse than usual. This is not a typical winter at all. There are winters where it barely gets to be. I mean, lately there's winters where it's barely gotten to be freezing. So you're definitely getting one of the worst ones. But the good news is, on these cold days, we can daydream about being in South Florida. Gulfstream Park back in action this weekend. We've been in this little bit of a calm before the storm period. Business picks up in a big way next week with the Pegasus, but it's still been pretty rock solid racing. Gulfstream, lots of player-friendly options. The tropical turf, pick 3, that's one we've been talking about on a bunch of shows. I'll have a show for the Friday version of that on Saturday. We're going to talk about some of the races that are contained in it. It begins in race number 6. We're actually going to pick right up in race number 7. 15% takeout on that tropical turf pick 3. $3 minimum for the bets. This has become a very popular wager that, in some small way, I think we had a hand in encouraging the creation of. We want people to take a look at that. Also on Saturdays, actually Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays for the next few weeks, we've got the coast-to-coast bet. The coast-to-coast on this Saturday card kicks on in race number 10. We'll talk about races 10 and 11 from Gulfstream, and I think in a later segment on the show, we're going to cover the other 3 races in this coast-to-coast bet. That's the 7th, the 9th, and the 11th. Limited CAW play, 15% takeout. Some of the best races of the day. Absolutely one of my favorite wagers, the coast-to-coast bet. But we'll start this show off talking about the late pick 5 at Gulfstream on Saturday, which kicks on with race number 7. We've got a maiden special weight, 7 furlongs. This is for the older horses. We had those interesting races for the 3-year-olds last week. We're a little light on 3-year-old action this week. Last week was big on it. We'll have another one, that famous, at this point becoming famous, 3-year-old maiden race that takes place on the Pegasus undercard. I'm sure we'll pay special attention to that, as it's produced a Derby winner in recent years. But we're going to kick off with this one for older horses going a mile. How do you want to light this candle, my friend?
Yeah, I'm going to single on the rail. I'm guessing you're calling this horse Wistucky.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's Wistucky. I don't know.
It's a horse for Dale Romans, who, if you look at the figures, he's got 4 figures that are basically better than anything else has ever run. That alone could be something that I could say I'm singling and move on. The other thing, though, too, is that he's got 3 races at a mile or longer, which makes me think that distance necessarily isn't a problem for that one. In a 1-turn mile, a couple of 1-turn miles in there. So the progression from 6 to 6.5 to 7, I think, is going to hit him right between the eyes. I think Timeform US has him on the lead, and he's on the rail, so you know that you're not going to get a tricky ride there. Junior has one way of going from the inside, and I think he'll just lead him all the way around there. I'm going to single with Stuckey to get started here.
I agree. Only things to add. I thought the last run was maybe better than it looked. You mentioned Timeform US. They had that as a closer's day as well. Oh, also, I thought that was an eye-catching work the other day. All the arrows pointing in that direction, and should it go wrong, we'll come back in another wager, perhaps the late pick 4, which commences in race number 8, or maybe we'll be alive in this middle leg of the all-turf pick 3 as well. Here we've got fillies and mares going a mile on the turf. I guess my first question is number 13 Risk Threshold going to get in? And what do we do with her if she is? Well, I'll use as an A if she gets in, has to be used on figures and form, but it is a tricky enough post and going to be bet enough that I still want some other horses. My official top pick, I'll take a little bit. Maybe this is a little bit of a reach, but it's a horse I can make enough of a case for if ready off the layoff the 3. Starship Agenda, I thought was interesting just based on that late speed. She showed 2 back. All went wrong last time as she got vanned off. Hasn't been seen since. The works for the comeback just look meh, but I'm interested in this one at the right price and one I'll certainly look for market signal in a bet like the double, heading into before we have to put down the pick 5s, we'll be able to see some market signal through the double in race number 8. And Starship Agenda, one that is on my radar, as is number 11, Viva Vuv, not just a hunch play for Michelle Yu. The last one was shockingly bad, but a real nice run of form before that. Has to work out a trip from the outside post, but might just be able to drop in and make one run. The numbers I was going to muck around with here were 3, 11, and 13. It's a tricky little race, though, JK. I'm curious how you see it.
Yeah, I hope risk threshold does get in. There's nothing I dislike more than an overbet sprinter stretching out, drawn extremely wide with speed, because there's only a couple scenarios that works out well, which is one is that the pace is slow, they pop away from there, they make the lead, and they get comfortable. But likely the scenario is that they kind of get hooked wide. They have to use with a horse stretching out to make the lead. You end up wide. You travel a further distance anyways because now you've lost ground. I don't like stretch outs drawn towards the outside. I'm going to use the 1, Life's an Audible, who gets Johnny Velasquez down on the inside, leaves that stakes race. Was closing into a slow pace last time. I'm going to use your Starship Agenda. Basically the same reasons. The 245-day layoff really is the biggest concern, but nothing that I don't think can't be overcome. I'm going to use Riding Pretty, who's got some interesting turf races, but ran well last time on the dirt, and I'm expecting this horse maybe just be improving and could take a step forward off a little bit of a break as well and freshening. And then Vivu, the 11, I'll use as well. Those are the 4 that I want to make sure I had.
1, 3, 4, and 11. JK's main opinion there sounds like a -1 on risk threshold should she get in. And I'd say the odds are pretty good in this big full field. So maybe an interesting opportunity there. Race number 9, we're talking about Florida bred stakes competition, the Sunshine Sprint Stakes, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. JK, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like Safi in here quite a bit. So I'll start with. Yeah, exactly. I'll start with the 2 towards the inside. Classify the 1, the 3, Comedy Town. I think they both make a ton of sense. Figure wise, they're right there. They're competitive. They win races at Gulfstream. They've won 7 races at Gulfstream between them. You get Irad, you get Drayden. These 2 make a lot of sense for me. I'll use those as A's. I don't need Mish in here. I think she's got speed, but he has speed, but I feel like he's going to be up against it to a certain extent with his form just going in the wrong direction. And then the last one I want to make sure I have is Damon's Mound, right? Damon's Mound was a horse that showed a bunch of talent back in 2022 as a 2-year-old, right? Won the Saratoga Special, had that impressive maiden at Gulfstream, spent the entire career with Michelle Lovell, and then now shows up for Bill Mott. And you'd like to think that there could be a little bit of an improvement there. It looks like Bill's had him for quite some time, started working up at Saratoga in October. So some time to kind of acclimate. I want to have a horse like this with some back class who's I think making the first start in Florida, which is interesting for a talented Florida bred.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Florida bred's known for their success against open company, of course, but there's a pretty robust program down there as well. Interesting to see how Damon's Mound gets on in the new hands. So much so that I made him the somewhat confident top pick, as you mentioned, been off a year in the care of Bill Mott, looks to be working well enough and really has very competitive numbers, especially if you build in any figure improvement for age, and just looks the best speed in here as well. I was looking, I know I'd written extensively about this horse and I couldn't remember where I went, so I did just a global search for him on my computer, and I found a rather embarrassing text exchange from you and I back in 2022 in a race where we were both saying Damon's Mound couldn't lose on a day when he ultimately did. But, that's horse racing. Maybe Damon's Mound gets it done this day. Of the Safis, Comedy Town was the one I thought would get the best trip of his trio. That's the one I wanted as a backup. Damon's Mound as the lone A. Are they coming for you, JK? I hear some sound.
Yeah.
That's loud. StreetYard usually cancels that out. That must be like right outside your window. we persevere. We persevere on to race number 10. We stay on the dirt. We're in the allowance ranks for these fillies and mares going 6 furlongs. I thought that number 5, Personal Choice, was against the grain of the track last time, according to Timeform US's bias color coding. And the horse just had license to need that race off the long layoff. Could pull a good stalking trip behind number 9, Our Disaster. I did want to use Our Disaster as well, just because it did look like the presumptive best speed. I was pretty simple. 5 and 9 in race number 10. Any other numbers you'd like to pull in, and what do you think of those?
Excuse me. Yeah, Our Disaster for sure. Ran into Nick Style last time. Nick Style, obviously an extremely talented sprinter up at Tampa in a stake race. So now you're going to get in here to this allowance company. You're drawn well. You get Tyler's, the Safi thing. I think the cutback from the 7 to the 6 is going to help quite a bit as well. So I'll use Our Disaster as a single A, but I'm going to use Cruz de Catalina as a B. It's a horse that I followed because it's a Catalina Cruiser, and Catalina Cruiser was standing at Lane's End, and so I was paying attention earlier last year. And Cruz de Catalina is a New York bred who actually entered in the Bay Ridge to wrap up the year, but scratched, didn't show up there. And I don't know if it was because they saw, this spot down the road. They said, let's just stay in South Florida rather than ship up. But I think Cruz de Catalina does have some upside. It's shown some talent. It needs to get just a taste faster, but is one that I think could move in the right direction. So I'm going to single A, Our Disaster. I'll use Cruz de Catalina and Personal Choice as B's.
All right, makes sense to me. Numbers-wise, that's 9 on top, with the 6 and the 5 on the B line for JK, as we move on to our nightcap, which is also going to be the last race in the Tropical Turf. Pick 3 on the day, maiden special weight for these 3-year-olds, and we've got a big full field to deal with in this spot. Jonathan, when it comes to all these late picks over at Gulfstream on Saturday, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah, I thought this one was pretty tough. Not a lot of signals here. I will say that I would encourage folks to check out the workout report. A lot of times down in South Florida, just like in Saratoga, you can see some works for horses that are on the turf. For instance, Tomasello, who's making his first start on the grass. Last 2 works have been on the turf. To know how those works went on the turf, it could go a long way in helping you decide whether or not you want to use that one or not. The ones that have run all look pretty similar, which makes situations like this sometimes a little bit tricky because you end up feeling like you need to use 900 of them. I'm going to use Spirit of the Law, who I thought ran well getting on the synthetic last time after starting the career on the dirt. So I'll use Spirit of the Law. I want to use Golden Channel for George Weaver. George, obviously can win with a first-time starter and the success he's had with young horses as of late. I want to make sure I have him. Gallant Lad for Michael Matz, who was closing into a pace that wasn't particularly quick last time. First time out, learning a lot with a patient trainer like that who only wins at 8% with their firsters anyways. The fact this horse ran as well as he did, I think, is an indication of the talent there. And then Kings of Ashes, I want to use for Brendan Walsh. You get Tyler Gaffleone and a horse that ran well on the synthetic, gets a chance to run on the grass, worked on the grass last time. It doesn't feel as if Brendan would work him on the grass, and then if he didn't go well on the grass, make a change there. And then Constitution Road for Chad Brown, I'll use with Irad, who ran well last time, closing into a slow pace, and is one that you got to use because you'd hate to get stuffed into a locker by Irad and Chad on the grass to wrap up a pick 5.
That was a likable effort too, Constitution Road. For a second, I thought you were going to be Oppo on another Chad Brown runner, and I was gonna push back and just say, hey, that was a really likable performance from Constitution Road because, like you said, it wasn't the fastest pace that day. Horse had a little bit of trouble, and I just like the way the pace line looks, honestly, as much as anything else about that horse. Just showed a decent amount of speed early. It was a very efficient run through the race. This horse should really improve second out. Hate the post. but maybe we'll be compensated for it a little bit in terms of the price. I like your backups. I may end up following you in and using all of them, but if I had gone first in the race, the one that I definitely would have mentioned in here as my notes stick on me was that Brendan Walsh runner that you mentioned. I thought that case for King of Ashes was very strong. So I'm going to call officially. I'm going to call it 12 with the 11 as a backup. I hate having all those. Hate having all the posts being stuck so far outside. So Spirit of the Law is another I'm going to list in my official picks as well. But I'll probably back up with everything you mentioned here at Gulfstream Park.